The throne room is silent, not because the war is over, because no one knows if it has just ended or if something even worse has begun. The Iron Throne stands before Rhaenyra Targaryen, its black blades glistening beneath the light pouring through the shattered windows of the Red Keep. Smoke drifts through the hall like ghostly banners. Somewhere outside, bells are ringing. Somewhere else, people are screaming. A dragon roars above King's Landing, not in victory, in warning. Rhaenyra slowly walks toward the throne. Every step echoes through the hall. The lords kneeling before her keep their eyes lowered. Hours ago, many of them would have called Aegon II their rightful king. Yesterday, they were Greens. Today, they are survivors. History has a strange habit of rewarding survival more than loyalty. She places one hand upon the cold iron. The throne cuts her palm. A single drop of blood runs across one of the ancient Valyrian blades. Some will one day claim this was proof the throne rejected her. Others will say the Iron Throne cuts everyone eventually, and that is the first lesson George R.R. Martin teaches us about history. The meaning of an event depends entirely on who survives to write it, but here's the question almost nobody asks. What if this moment didn't end with Rhaenyra's downfall? What if this was the beginning of her reign, not for weeks, not for months, for decades? Because here's something fascinating. The dance of the dragons was never inevitable, at least not in the way most people imagine. When readers think about the Civil War, they often picture an unstoppable chain of disasters. Lucerys dies, blood and cheese happens. Rook's Rest, the Gullet, Tumbleton, the storming of the Dragon Pit. Rhaenyra dies, Aegon dies. The dragons disappear. The end. It feels inevitable, like destiny. But George R.R. Martin rarely writes destiny. He writes consequences, tiny decisions that slowly become impossible to undo. And when you read Fire and Blood closely, something surprising appears. The Blacks were never dramatically weaker than the Greens. In fact, for much of the war, they possessed almost every strategic advantage. More dragons, more experienced dragon riders, greater naval strength through House Velaryon, control of Dragonstone, the loyalty of the North, the Riverlands. Eventually, the Vale. Even economically, the Greens were far from secure. So why did they lose? Most fans answer with one word: luck. But history rarely changes because of luck alone. It changes because of systems, because pressure builds for years before anyone notices the crack, and the first crack appears long before Viserys dies. It appears the day he refuses to choose. Viserys believed love could solve politics. He believed naming Rhaenyra heir would end the question forever. Instead, it ensured that everyone around him would spend 20 years preparing for the opposite outcome. Otto Hightower wasn't creating a conspiracy. He was responding to uncertainty. Every lord in Westeros understood something Viserys refused to accept. Succession crises don't begin when kings die. They begin when kings hesitate. This is exactly what happened during the historical anarchy in England, the conflict that inspired the dance. King Stephen and Empress Matilda weren't simply fighting over a crown. They were fighting over decades of uncertainty created before the war even began. Martin borrowed not just the events, but the political logic behind them. Now imagine one tiny difference. Not a different king, not a different prophecy, not another dragon, just one decision. Lucerys Velaryon survives Storm's End. At first, that sounds insignificant. One prince, one dragon, one storm. But think about what Lucerys' death actually accomplished. It didn't merely remove an heir. It transformed a succession dispute into a blood feud. Until that moment, both factions could still imagine peace. After Storm's End, peace becomes almost impossible. Daemon answers with blood and cheese. The Greens answer with total war. Moderates disappear. Fear replaces politics. That single night reshapes the psychology of everyone involved. But what if Vhagar never catches Arax? This isn't impossible. Even in Fire and Blood, there's ambiguity. Did Aemon truly intend murder? Or did he simply lose control of the oldest dragon alive? House of the Dragon leans toward the second interpretation. And if that's true, then history nearly changed by accident. Imagine Arax escaping into the storm. Lucerys reaches Dragonstone alive. He brings terrible news. The Baratheons have chosen Aegon, but he also brings something even more valuable: time. No murdered prince, no demand for vengeance, no blood and cheese. Daemon loses the moral justification for escalating the conflict into terror. For perhaps the first time, Rhaenyra can actually choose strategy over revenge, and that's where the war begins changing. Not because anyone suddenly becomes smarter, because grief no longer dictates every decision. Most viewers overlook how emotional the dance truly is. Every disastrous decision follows a personal tragedy. Luke dies, Jaehaerys dies, Rhaenys dies, Jace dies. Each death narrows the political imagination of those left behind. Every council meeting becomes less rational. Every negotiation becomes impossible. Without Luke's death, that chain never fully begins. The Greens still hold King's Landing. The Blacks still control Dragonstone, but both sides now have something precious: options. Daemon, perhaps the most dangerous man in Westeros, suddenly finds himself constrained by politics instead of rage. His instincts still push toward violence, but Rhaenyra has no reason to authorize atrocities that would destroy her legitimacy before she even claims the throne. And legitimacy is everything, because wars are rarely won on the battlefield. They are won in the minds of those who haven't chosen a side yet. Every undecided lord watches. Every merchant counts ships. Every maester writes letters. Every raven carries rumors. This is the invisible battlefield Martin rarely describes directly, but it shapes every visible one. And in that invisible war, Rhaenyra begins with advantages that history often forgets. The first battle never happens. At least, not the battle everyone remembers. Without Lucerys' death, there is no blood and cheese. Without blood and cheese, Aegon II never experiences the kind of grief that transforms a frightened young king into a man consumed by vengeance. This matters far more than most readers realize, because throughout Fire and Blood, George R.R. Martin returns to one idea again and again. Wars are rarely decided by armies. They're decided by emotions. Every escalation during the dance follows a funeral. Every atrocity follows another atrocity. Violence doesn't create victory. It creates permission for more violence. Take blood and cheese out of the equation, and suddenly neither side has crossed the point of no return. That doesn't mean peace. Far from it. Otto Hightower still wants Aegon crowned. Daemon still wants the throne for Rhaenyra. The dragons are still alive. The armies are still marching. But the war changes shape. It becomes political before it becomes personal, and politics was always where the Blacks were strongest. Think about the balance of power for a moment. Dragonstone remains secure. House Velaryon's fleet controls Blackwater Bay. The North has already declared for Rhaenyra. Lady Jane Arryn remains loyal. The Riverlands continue leaning black. The Greens possess the capital. The Blacks possess almost everything surrounding it. This is a siege before a single siege engine is built. King's Landing begins starving long before anyone notices, because cities don't survive on pride, they survive on grain, and grain comes by sea. Here's where Martin hides one of the most important political details in the entire dance. Everyone remembers dragons. Almost nobody remembers ships. Yet Corlys Velaryon commands the greatest fleet in Westeros. Without complete control of Blackwater Bay, King's Landing slowly suffocates. Not dramatically, quietly. Bread becomes expensive. Fish disappear from the markets. Merchants stop arriving. Rumors spread faster than food, and rumors are just as dangerous. Imagine you're a gold cloak. You've sworn loyalty to Aegon, but your children haven't eaten properly in 3 days. Now imagine hearing whispers that Dragonstone still has supplies, that Rhaenyra is offering pardons, that Lord Stark is marching south, that the Velaryon fleet grows larger every week. Loyalty begins to feel expensive. This is how kingdoms truly collapse. Not through spectacular battles, through ordinary people deciding survival matters more than banners. Otto Hightower understands this better than anyone. Unlike Aemond, Otto doesn't worship dragons. He worships stability. His greatest fear isn't losing a battle. It's losing legitimacy. And legitimacy begins disappearing the moment people believe another ruler can feed them. History gives us dozens of examples. Constantinople, Paris, Rome. Even the historical anarchy that inspired the dance. Cities almost always betray starving kings. Now ask yourself something. What is Otto's greatest weapon? Not Aegon, not Vhagar. Time. Every day Rhaenyra delays. More lords begin questioning her resolve. Every week without action, neutral houses drift toward the Greens. Otto knows this, which means he cannot simply wait behind the walls forever. He must force Rhaenyra into a mistake. Historically, she obliged. Again and again, she reacted emotionally. She divided her dragons. She trusted the wrong people. She allowed grief to dictate strategy. But this Rhaenyra is different. Not wiser, not smarter, simply less broken. Luke is alive. Jace remains optimistic. Daemon is dangerous, but controllable. For the first time since Viserys died, the Black Council actually functions as a council. Corlys argues for blockade. Rhaenys argues for patience. Jacaerys argues for diplomacy. Even Daemon reluctantly admits that every day without open war strengthens their position. And then something remarkable happens. The first great house defects. Not because of dragons, because of mathematics. House Tarly, perhaps House Rowan. Smaller Reach lords begin quietly opening negotiations. They don't publicly declare for Rhaenyra, not yet, but they begin preparing for her victory. This is exactly how medieval politics worked. Nobody wanted to be first. Everyone wanted to avoid being last. Momentum becomes a weapon. Every new ally creates another. Every lord who bends the knee makes resistance feel less inevitable. The Greens begin noticing. Alicent notices first. Unlike her sons, she still remembers court politics. She understands perception. She knows that once enough banners change, the war is already over. Even if no battle has been fought, she urges negotiation. Otto agrees. Aemond refuses. And suddenly, the greatest threat to the Greens is no longer Rhaenyra, it's themselves. This is something Martin repeatedly explores across A Song of Ice and Fire. Strong families rarely collapse because enemies destroy them. They collapse because victory demands unity, and ambition makes unity impossible. Tywin understood it. Ned Stark understood it. Doran Martell understood it. The Hightowers never do. Aemond wants glory. Criston Cole wants decisive battle. Otto wants patience. Alicent wants survival. Aegon wants approval. 5 leaders, 5 different wars. Meanwhile, the Blacks begin acting like a government. That difference changes everything. Then comes Harrenhal. Historically, Daemon's occupation of Harrenhal became one of the strangest episodes of the dance. Weeks stretched into months. Aemond abandoned King's Landing to chase him. Neither side seemed entirely interested in fighting. Many readers have asked the same question. Why? Because on the surface, it makes no sense. But perhaps it wasn't supposed to. Perhaps Daemon was never trying to defeat Aemon. Perhaps he was distracting him. Think about it. Every day Vhagar spends flying across the Riverlands. She isn't protecting King's Landing. Every league Aemon travels, Rhaenyra grows politically stronger. The largest dragon in the world becomes strategically irrelevant. Daemon doesn't need to win. He only needs Aemon to keep chasing him. And Aemon, being exactly the man his pride demands him to be, cannot resist. History remembers great warriors. Politics remembers useful fools. Aemon becomes exactly that. By the time he realizes it, King's Landing has become isolated. The blockade tightens. Bread riots begin months earlier. Gold cloaks quietly desert. Merchants leave the city. Small folk begin asking dangerous questions. If dragons make kings, why are we starving? That question has destroyed more kingdoms than any sword ever forged. And once people begin asking it, there is no answer powerful enough to silence them forever.